Hey, good morning, everybody. All right, so in a minute, you're going to hear from the mayor and the leadership of the NYPD, the police commissioner as well. I think last night is another example of why we call New York's finest. Just a tremendous job done by the men and women of the NYPD. Such restraint, such precision, just a totally great job by the men and women of the NYPD, especially our ESU, SRG, and CRT units. So I can, from all of us up here, we just want to commend them, and I'm sure from most of the New Yorkers we spoke to, big kudos to those units and all of the cops who helped in that operation last night. So let's get this started, and let's hear from the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams.
Thank you so much, Tariq. I want to be clear that although there was a massive operation taking place at Columbia University, we also was dealing with an operation taking place at CUNY, and we also had a city to protect. So this is not the department that will deal with one production at a time. There are a multitude of things that happens in a city of this capacity and magnitude, and you have to be a well-organized professional operation to deal with all of those encounters. And I just want to thank Commissioner Caban, the Chief of Department, Madry, Chief Shell, Commissioner Daughtry, First Deputy Commissioner Kinsella, and the entire operation. And specifically, I just really want to thank Commissioner Weiner. She was the one that was monitoring the situation when I first started seeing the protests take place in the city. It just did not fit right. I saw similar indicators from the Black Lives Matters March when it was brought to my attention that there were those who came to the city to disrupt our city, and she was able, through her team, was able to conduct an investigation, and what I feared was actually materialized and actualized by those who were on the ground. And I know that there are those who are attempting to say, well, the majority of people may have been students. You don't have to be the majority to influence and co-op an operation. That is what this is about. And so if we want to play the word police, you could do so. I want to play the New York City police, where we're going to protect our city from those who are attempting to do what is happening globally. There is a movement to radicalize young people, and I'm not going to wait until it's done and all of a sudden acknowledge the existence of it. This is a global problem that young people are being influenced by those who are professionals at radicalizing our children, and I'm not going to allow that to happen as the mayor of the city of New York. So the men and women of the New York City Police Department should be proud of yourself. At the request of Columbia University, after speaking with them throughout the week, at their request and their acknowledgement that outside agitators were on their grounds training and really co-opting this movement, at their request, we went in and conducted an operation to allow Columbia University to remove those who have turned the peaceful protest into a place where anti-Semitism and anti-Israel attitudes were pervasive. Approximately 300 people were arrested at Columbia and City College. We are processing the arrests to distinguish between who were actual students and who were not supposed to be on the ground. And we pointed out yesterday, these external actors with a history of escalating situations and trying to create chaos, not to peacefully protest, but create chaos. If you were at City College and you saw the bottles, the garbage cans, the other items that were thrown at police officers, those police officers showed a great level of discipline to not allow this to evolve to an out-of-control situation. As we pointed out yesterday, they are attempting to disrupt our city, and we are not going to permit it to happen. And we're proud to say they have been removed from the campus. The NYPD's precision policing ensured that the operation was organized, calm, and that there were no injuries or violent clashes. And to be clear, this is not our analysis of what took place last night. National independent journalists acknowledged what the police department did yesterday, and they were on the ground to see it. And I want to be clear that we will continue to use this level of professionalism. And we saw the intersectionality of all the things we have been working on. Drones allowed us to do a complete analysis of the Hamilton building and the location. We were able to know how to precisely go in and conduct the operation, making sure the encryption of our radios, because they were not able to monitor and hear our deployment tactics. It allowed us to have the element of surprise that we went on the ground, training with our CRT team, precisionally knowing how to go in and conduct a professional operation. We didn't wake up and executed a plan. This is a plan that has been put in place since January 2022, when we understood our police department had to be prepared for uncertainties like this. And so the request we received in writing could not have been clearer. While those who broke into the building did include students, it was led by individuals who are not affiliated with the university. The school needed the NYPD's assistance to clear Hamilton Hall and the encampments outside, a dual operation on the grounds that took place successfully, clearing the tents, taking back and reclaiming Hamilton Hall. And we said from the beginning that students have a right to protest, and free speech is the cornerstone of our society. But as our major concern, we knew and we saw that there were those who were never concerned about free speech. They were concerned about chaos. It was about external actors hijacking peaceful protests and influence students to escalate. There's nothing peaceful about barricading buildings, destroying property, or dismantling security cameras. We cannot allow what should be a lawful protest to turn into a violent spectacle that saves and serves no purpose, as I said. There's no place for acts of hate in our city. We made that clear. That's from anti-Semitism to Islamophobia to anti-Sikhism and other communities as our AAPI community. We have been consistent. There's no place for hate in this city, and I want to continue to commend the professionalism of the police department and to thank Columbia University. It was a tough decision. We understood that. But with the very clear evidence of their observation and the clear evidence from our intelligence division that they understood it was time to move and the action had to end. And we brought it to a peaceful conclusion. And we're going to continue to coordinate with Columbia, as we have been from the start, and all of our academic institutions, to find a peaceful middle of allowing our young people to protest without violence. We support the right of free speech and open debate. We will always protect the right to protest, but we must balance the right with keeping students, the school, and our city safe. And it is a combined effort that we're going to continue to move in the right direction to accomplish this goal. We know that this is only a comma in the full sentence of public protection in the city. This is not a celebratory moment. We should never had to get here in the first place. We can't create environments while children could be in danger, and we must push back on all attempts to radicalize our young people in the city like we're seeing across the entire globe. Commissioner, thank you for a job well done, and turn it over to you at this time.
And good morning, and thank you, Mayor Adams. So yesterday, the NYPD received written notification from both Columbia University and the City College of New York. The situation on their campuses had deteriorated to a point where the safety of their students, faculty, staff, and the public was at risk. So last night, at both schools' requests, the NYPD entered the campuses and removed protesters who refused to leave the area. Approximately 300 arrests were made, with preliminary charges ranging from trespass to criminal mischief to burglary. At this point, we're going to let the criminal justice system play out. But as we said last night, the universities worked for weeks to negotiate with the protesters, to resolve the situation, and to restore order on their campuses. But once it became clear that public safety was a real concern, especially after the protesters escalated the situation by breaking and entering into a university building, the NYPD was called in to do their job. And I just want to say to the men and women of this department, thank you. Since the terrorist attack of October 7th, the NYPD has responded to more than 2,400 protests and demonstrations across this city. About 1,100 of those were related to the situation in Israel and Palestine. And at every one, we've worked to keep protesters safe and protect their First Amendment rights. At the same time, we've worked to keep our residents and workforce safe, to make sure our neighborhoods have full access to emergency services, and to keep life moving in the largest city in the nation. This isn't easy work, but no one does it better than the men and women of the NYPD. Lastly, I want to thank the officials at both Columbia University and City College for their efforts with the developing situation, their continuous and open communication with everyone involved, from the protesters to their students and staff, to city officials, including the police department, was all about public safety. And at the end of the day, that's what we're focused on. Our job is to keep people in our city safe, and the NYPD is ready to do their job anywhere and anytime we're called upon. They tried to lock us out, but the NYPD and the people of the city of New York will never be locked out, and we will always work together to keep our city safe.
With that, we'll take questions.
Marshal Kramer?
Commissioner and Mr. Mayor, I wonder if you could tell us how many of the people who were arrested both inside Hamilton Hall and outside were not affiliated with the school, were not students, were outside agitators, both inside and outside. And I have a second question.
Thank you. I'll pass that question over to our Chief Patrol,
All
John
right,
Shaw.
so right now, as it breaks down, we have 282 arrests. As of right now, we have 282 arrests. 173 of those came from City College, 109 came from Columbia. How it breaks down to your question, we'll have that answer sometime today. We haven't broken it down yet, but we will have that answer.
Can you give us any more details about the people who were not affiliated with them? Or were they what groups they were associated with?
Good morning. So there are a number of different individuals who we know from over the years associated with protests, not just in our city, but in other cities as well, who are linked to and who we see doing training around the change in tactics that we described yesterday and that we all witnessed. The black bloc attire, the breaking windows, breaking doors, the vandalism, property destruction, the barricading, makeshift weapons that we recovered in the encampment. And so that change in tactics, combined with the presence of known individuals on campus in the lead up to what happened in Hamilton Hall, is why we had a real elevated concern around public safety.
Katie Honey?
Just one moment. And, Marsha, we know that the terminology of outside agitators was used during the civil rights movement, and people attempted to show that the movement was not legitimate. So we understand that. But this police department cannot get caught up on what's the political correct terminology. We have to be caught up on public safety. There were individuals on the campus, should not have been there. There were people who are professionals, and we saw evidence of training. We saw a shift in tactics that were being used. And when you start using the intelligence that Intel was able to supply, we knew it was time to communicate directly with the school and say, you have more than a peaceful protest on your hand.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, if I could just add to that, just as the letter said that we received from Columbia, this was led by outside agitators. And this was also stated in the letter that we received when Columbia asked us to move in.
All right, I think we have a video that we want to show you before we take some more questions. So, if you can play the video. Before we continue with questions, Commissioner Shepard will just give a quick overview of what we just saw, and then we'll continue with the questions.
Yeah, the reason why we just showed that video is that a lot of arrests made, almost 300 arrests made last night, and what you see is the overwhelming majority of those arrests that were made without incident. No injuries, no real scuffles with police. It was just an amazing job again, and kudos to Chief Arambulis and his team, SRG, and ESU, and obviously Commissioner Daughtry leading, and Chief Shell leading the CRT last night. So make no mistake about it, this is a very difficult operation, but we made it look like that it wasn't problematic. And the reason was the skill of the cops that were out there last night. A lot of these people would have resisted, but the way that these officers talked to them, handled them, and took them into custody, it was very professional, and the overwhelming majority of arrests just led to a quick arrest with no incident, and then right down to MAPC where they were processed.
And another significant part of the video was at the end. That's our flag, folks. Don't take over our buildings and put another flag up. That may be fine to other people, but it's not to me. My uncle died defending this country, and these men and women put their lives on the line. And it's despicable that schools will allow another country flag to fly in our country. So blame me for being proud to be an American. And I thank Commissioner Daughtry for putting that flag back up. We're not surrendering our way of life to anyone.
Katie Honan?
Could you just, I wanted to just double back on the outside agitators. I know you said you'd identified some people. Why is it so difficult for the NYPD to say X amount of people were outside agitators, especially since you've identified them? The mayor's been talking about them for more than a week. And secondly, blocking reporters from covering the events, then tweeting out your own videos, showing us this video. It's different than what we were seeing outside, especially the use of what seemed to be use of force from the police. Is that part of the NYPD's attempt to control the narrative, which I know some of the people in the dais have talked about before? But I guess first with the outside agitators, why is it so difficult to just say, 10 people, 20 people, especially if, as you say, they were leading the occupation of the building?
Yeah, so, I think it's not difficult to say that we know certain individuals that are well known to us who have been involved in what we assess to be training, especially around a change in tactics. We're in the process of sorting through all of the data that we recovered last night. So sifting through the names of everybody and were they affiliated with a school or not, that takes time, and we want to make sure that we're giving you accurate information. But I think the larger point is really important, which is this is not about students expressing ideas. It is about a change in tactics that presents a concern and a normalization and mainstreaming of rhetoric. And I'm not just talking about language, I'm now talking about tactics, and that's what shifted our response yesterday. But a normalization and mainstreaming of rhetoric associated with terrorism that has now become pretty common on college campuses, right? You see people wearing headbands associated with foreign terrorist organizations. This happened in October when you had a viral TikTok reissuing of Osama bin Laden's 2002 letter to America. So that's a larger concern. It's separate from what happened yesterday, but they're related. We do not want ideas, we do not want campuses, which are where people are supposed to be learning and being in a conducive environment for all of the things that we do in schools, being turned into places where people are committing vandalism, property damage, and committing crimes.
But if you know who the leaders are, you said yesterday at a press conference, it would be repeated on national television. Why not say 3, 4, 5 people? The mayor said last week that he questioned why all the tents were the same when they aren't. It's this question of outside agitators. It's been a prevalent message being shared by the NYPD and City Hall. So can you offer us any more insight into it beyond just a lock that they sold to Columbia students as a bike lock?
Let me be very clear. This is an ongoing, evolving investigation. The Intelligence Division must be extremely sensitive about information they release. Our goal is not to ensure you get a good story. Our goal is to make sure that we tell the right story. There are people that we have been watching in organizations that are not part of the campus. We've been very clear. There are individuals and organizations that are not students. We're seeing a shift in tactics that are being used, destruction of property, destructions of cameras, and so many other things. We saw paraphernalia and pamphlets about disruptions. There's a series of things that the Intelligence Division has brought to make a determination that there's an influence going on right now. Now, we know that people would rather us put in a neat little bow, but that is not the way law enforcement operate, and we're not going to release any information that is too sensitive to release at this time. We know there are outside individuals that have been influencing this issue.
And
Yeah,
Katie,
Commissioner.
the second part of your question when it comes to the press. So just take you back through yesterday. We released 2 messages to the press right before this operation was taking place, that if you're a member of the press and you wanted to get some access and get some shots, to come and meet a DCPI representative on 114th Street, and then we'll work it out with you from there. The reason why we have our own cameras inside of there is because we have police officers. They have tactical gear, they have helmets, they have vests, and we don't know what to expect when we go through these doors. So we cannot just take the press and go hitting doors with ESU. It doesn't work like that. When we were very transparent, and we also shared our video with members of the media this morning. It's available from DCPI now to continue sharing. All right?
And Commissioner, let me just add on to that. When we, and Carlos, you can chime in if you want, but when we took action on NYU, when we received NYU's letter that they wanted to declare their encampment, when I tell you my own personal opinion is that the press kind of got in the way of our operation. There was hundreds of views getting in the way of officers as they were trying to make arrests. Okay, well, I'm saying it was more than 50, and we got video to prove that. So thank you, Commissioner Shepard, for getting the press together so we can know where the press is at, and that we don't confuse them with the students or protesters. Thank you.
Follow up.
Oh, thanks. So My question is twofold. I want to know about the individuals who are in training, who made these makeshift weapons, who have the pamphlets and all of that. Is that one certain group? Would you call this a new breed of homegrown terrorists that we should be worried about here in New York City if you're tracking them across America? And then my second question is about that impressive tactic of going into the building on that Bearcat that was dramatic and impressive to see. Was there something about the timing of when you did that? Can you paint a picture of what was going inside, what you could see on the drones? With those makeshift weapons, was violence imminent, and did you think at that point you have to go in?
So Commissioner wanted to take the first, and we'll jump around this to get the second.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's really important to very, in a nuanced way, describe what we're seeing, and I wouldn't describe it as a new breed of homegrown terrorism. There is, though, a concern around radicalization, as the mayor and the police commissioner have conveyed, I think, very effectively. This is a time when, if you have, and to your point about being more specific, last week there was the wife of somebody who had been convicted for material support to terrorism on campus, and we have no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing on her part, but that's not somebody who I would want necessarily influencing my child if I were a parent of somebody at Columbia, or the individuals who are involved in doing some of this training and tactical awareness activity. These students don't come in the doors knowing how to barricade themselves behind barriers that they've created, right? These are all skills that are taught and learned, and that presents a problem. And so, this is not about policing ideas in any way, shape, or form. It is about recognizing when there is an actual public safety concern. And we mentioned this yesterday, but it's worth reiterating to the protesters themselves. If you're barricaded in a building and an emergency happens, there's a risk to you. So it's specific, and we have to be calibrated, but we also have to be open and honest about what we're seeing, and we're seeing a trajectory that concerns us. Oh, yeah, so some images of stuff that was recovered, and, there was the image on the bottom left was pretty widespread distribution in the initial weeks after October 7th, and when we saw a lot of big numbers of individuals in protests, which is just a map of locations that were focused on for protest activity. Imagery on the top right suggesting fomenting chaos and squatting as a tactic, which we've seen in protests previously, some zip ties and some what we would call a very rudimentary makeshift weapon. And I think the reason for all of the protective gear that you saw last night, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues who specialize in this, is to protect officers when you're going into a situation that you don't fully understand what might greet you on the other side of the door. So this is important, and it is not just a New York City issue. It's obviously not just a Columbia issue. We saw it spread to CCNY last night, but this is unfolding across the country and in Europe as well. So this is a challenge we're all going to be dealing with for some time.
So good morning, everyone. So it took carefully planning, especially with the chief of department, Chief Madry, and also all the executive boards, chief members that in our department, to plan this tactics to enter this building. So as we saw, there was several areas where they were barricaded by several items, such as vending machines, chairs, tables, and so on. And as we entered, it was very difficult for us to get in and push our way through because they were throwing objects at us. So it was very difficult. So the amount that it took, but it was, we tactically had every team around the building to enter that building. So there was carefully planning.
Since we're on this topic, can we just go get TikTok of some of the planning? The response was enormous. And can we just maybe sort of how that played out, at what point did you decide to plan for this, and how well that came together?
And I'll speak to that. Thank you for just bringing that question to light. We really didn't plan for this. Remember, Hamilton Hall was just taken over recently, fairly recently, and we didn't get any requests from Columbia. As a matter of fact, I did a press conference around 11 o'clock yesterday. We did not have a request. So when I finally got to the office yesterday and we realized we had a request, we had to put a plan together fast, all right? But this is what we do. We're the best police department in the world for a reason, because we do have the ability to adapt, sit down. You know, we brought all the thought leaders in the room, Chief of Special Operations Division, Chief of Emergency Service Unit, Chief of Patrol, Chief of Transit, Chief of Housing. I had them all in the room because they have years and years, hundreds of years of experience in the room. And we had to figure out how we were going to deal with what was going on in the street, which was the first part of the plan, because we had to be able to move. We had to be able to bring the Bearcat in. All right, we had to make sure we had a clear passage for the buses once we had arrested individuals on the buses. There was a lot that went into it. Then we had to deal with the encampment, and then we had to deal with the building. We had to make sure we kept them separate. So the decision was made that Chief of Patrol would lead the strategy on the ground to deal with the encampment, while the Chief of Special Operations Division and the Chief of ESU would deal with the building. All that equipment you see is life-saving equipment, all right? It's not equipment to go out and hurt and attack people. That is life-saving equipment. When we have to save someone, that's the equipment that we use. In this case, we had to breach a building, a very difficult building, a building that we knew doors were fortified with vending machines, couches, metal chairs, and the students and the people who were in the building were also pushing against the building and throwing objects at ESU as they made entry, all right? For the first time in many years, we use distraction devices, something we haven't used in years. The only person in the department who's authorized to allow that is me. And before we sat down, I told the members of the ESU, try not to use them, but if we're under attack, and we have to do this not only to keep them safe, but to keep the students safe, we made a decision to use them, and that's what we did. And even prior to going to Columbia, we had to pivot because City College got violent, and we had to send some of the resources from Columbia to help deal with City College, come back down to Columbia, then go back to City College. We didn't plan for that, all right? But this is this department's ability to move and pivot as needed to keep people safe, and that's what we did yesterday.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing to that. We also had to secure 5 dorms of over 2,000 students to make sure they were safe, and we didn't give them the option to come out of the dorm for just that reason. So there was 2,000 additional kids on that campus that we secured. They didn't come out, and that's what added to the level of safety and success we had in this plan.
Okay, we're going to take 2 more questions. Tina Moore, New York Post.
Hi, Commissioner Weiner. To go back to the wife of the man convicted on terror charges, was she advising them, training them? Can you give us a little bit more on what she was doing there?
So her presence was last week. It was, before what we saw over the last couple of days. And, we haven't been in the encampment, so we don't have a lot of fidelity on exactly. And it isn't just her. There was a ton of people coming onto the campus, and Columbia University described in their letter that the college had become a magnet for people from the outside. And again, this isn't just something we're hearing from Columbia, it's something that other universities have told us as well. And they know their student population better than anybody. We know the people we know, they know their community. And so this is something we are all seeing independently, is external folks. And does this inherently mean that you're going to see the kind of escalatory tactics that we saw yesterday? It may or may not. But when we do see them, we understand that there's a risk.
All right, this will be our final question. Aaron Katursky.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks, guys, for doing this. I wondered, maybe for the Commissioner or the Mayor, if you could just say a little bit about, prior to the authorization letter arriving, what your conversations with Columbia were like that led up to it, and then what information you were sharing and what they were telling you, and then also just your expectations on presence going forward. How many officers remain on campus? It seems like you're authorized to be there through commencement. What's your expectation about what you're going to have to do in the next couple of weeks?
The Commissioner could talk about his conversations, but we have been having ongoing conversations with all of our universities. Once we picked up from our intelligence that there was a real desire to start taking over buildings and a desire to escalate what was happening already. And we spoke with the institutions and told them we're here. When you need us, we're going to pivot quickly. And I think it was clear from the combination of what Intel was able to share and the observations that the schools were making, that the decision was made. As Chief Madry stated, this was a last-minute call. When we did our press conference, we did not receive a letter at that time, but I think the escalation of taking over the Hamilton building, people saw the information that the Intel was supplying. But we have been in regular contact with the school leadership, not only the president, but part of their operation management, and we communicated with them, shared information with them. As we got it, we shared it with them. So we knew the balance of not going in without being invited unless there was imminent threat. We knew that balance, and I know the commissioner could share his conversations also with the leadership.
Yeah, pretty much the same conversations about students' right to protest peacefully, and obviously keeping every student, faculty, and staff safe at the schools. And I'll turn it over to Chief Department, who can talk about what we're going to do going forward as far as presence there at the schools.
Yep. Right after this, we're going to go out. We're going to do an assessment of the campus. We're going to make sure we speak with the campus officials, and then we're going to make a determination what kind of resources that we're going to put there. Our resources are there to support the university staff, the public safety on campus, the teachers, the faculty members on campus, just to make sure that the environment is safe. So that's what our goal is going forward. We're going to see how we can assist them, make a determination how many officers that will be needed to do that, so that the campus, the faculty, public safety, the teachers, the leadership, they can function and get through commencement.
So there'll be an NYPD.
The campus is secure as we speak, and we'll do a reassessment like Chief Madry just mentioned.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention. Thank you.
Raise your hand.
Katie, come grab us. It's not a fight club.